We're living our truth now. Krista, what?
Krista who?
Christadelphian?
Did you say Christian Dolphin? So are you from Philadelphia?
Welcome to the Life After Leaving Podcast, an ex-Christadelphian podcast. Before we begin, please note that today's episode mentions some difficult topics, including domestic violence, including reference to sexual assault. We recognize that these topics may be triggering for some people. You may want to skip over some sections of this podcast or skip this episode if this would cause you distress to hear about these situations. However, healing often occurs when we tell and share our stories. I hope ex-Christadelphians feel empowered by sharing their stories on this podcast and that anyone who has struggled with trauma is seeking the support they need. Thank you. Hello, heathens, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Zinnia. Today's guest is Leah. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So today I want to interview you to hear your story about becoming an ex-Christadelphian. So we'll start by going through what it was like growing up a Christadelphian, what the process of leaving looked like for you, and where you're at now in your life, and anything you'd want to share with people who may be going through a similar journey. So we'll start by talking about, real quick, how long has it been since you left the Christadelphians?
Oh, it's probably been a good 15 years, if my math serves me, about that.
Okay.
But my exit was kind of protracted, so yeah, it's a rough number.
That's okay. We'll go through it and you'll be able to explain what that whole process was like for you. And can you also tell us what part of the world you're in? Some people may be guessing based on your accent.
I'm from Australia.
Welcome. I'm glad we were able to make another Australian podcast happen. So let's start at the beginning. Were you born into the group?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was born Christo.
And both parents, I guess, were probably Christadelphians.
Yeah, both
Okay.
my parents are Christadelphians. And both my grandparents, both sides were as well. So very,
Oh, yeah. Deep into it.
yeah.
So do you want to tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like being raised Christadelphian?
Yeah, sure. Look, there were actually a lot of good things as well as not so good things about being raised Christadelphian. I guess my childhood was pretty chill in terms of that. Like, I didn't have too many issues as far as I felt at the time. Like, I felt quite confident and happy. And it's funny because I remember when I was in school, like just having a general sense of well-being, that I was better than everyone else because I was going to live forever and they weren't going to.
I like the part about the well-being, but then the I'm better than everybody else. I'm afraid you got me.
Yeah.
But I also think a lot of people can relate to that who were raised Christadelphian of being God's chosen people, you know? We're the chosen ones. We're just so good.
Yeah, totally. Like, I remember I just left this, like, in the yearbook, I remember leaving the snarkiest comment, like, I don't know what you guys are going to be doing. I'll be in the kingdom, so.
Wait, in like a regular fucking school?
Yeah,
Wow.
I was in a smart school. And the fact that I was unpopular now, in hindsight, kind of, I can understand, sympathize.
All right, you've humbled a little bit.
I've humbled a little bit and reconnecting with some of my old mates in high school has definitely been great because, during high school, you're like, yeah, she was not cool. And then, genuinely, I was not cool. And then, later I was like, okay, yeah, she's not that bad.
Did any of them sit you down to tell you you've changed but in a good way? Thank you.
No, because no one cared about me that much.
Okay.
But yeah, I do remember my classmates tried to sit me down and tell me that I was wrong about the Trinity, and that was hilarious.
Little intervention with the Catholics.
An intervention, and they're mostly Christian,
okay,
Baptist, a variety of denominations, but
wow, they were so united in it. My first thought was Catholic.
They were really united. Absolutely, yeah, they were super united in. There's Like they didn't care about the kids that were like Muslim or Hindu in the room. They were just like, this bitch doesn't believe in the Trinity.
They're like,
It
you
was
call yourself
wild.
a Christian.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was
Like,
like, yeah,
you don't know the basics.
yeah. You definitely don't know the basics. And me still being very
Yeah. Did you like
cocky
drop
was like,
some quotes?
I don't remember.
Be like, this
I
is
mean,
Ephesians 7:11, or whatever it was, and just be like, throw some
not
quotes at you.
even. To be honest, I don't remember what I did. The only thing I remember is a room full of men yelling at me, which will be a common theme in our story, yes.
Wait, was this at school? I'm confused as to who was calling
Yes,
you a
this was at
witch. At
school.
school, really? Okay, so the sense of
Mm.
well-being is kind of fading a little bit in my mind. It sounds like there was some weird stuff going on. Was it
Yeah.
more like elementary school age, like, younger than 10 was really good, and then like into adolescence it started to have more of
Yeah.
religion coming
Mm.
up, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. Because as a little kid, it's fairly simple. Um, your parents tell you that you're smart, so therefore you're smart. Your parents tell you that you're talented and creative, and therefore you're talented and creative. And your parents
Oh,
tell you that you're like special and saved, and you're like, yeah, I'm special and saved. Yeah, like as soon as you start like meeting other people with like critical thinking, that will like tear you apart. Or reality will
yeah,
tear you apart. I don't know I don't know
yeah.
how you would put it, but yeah. But yeah,
It's
they were the school kids because I went to a mainstream school,
mhm.
and but it's funny because in Christadelphian like young people circles, I also wasn't very popular.
I was curious
um,
about that, what your relationships were like. It sounds like you had a very
yeah.
loving family at home, but I was curious,
hmm
you had some of these tensions at school. What was it like with other Christadelphians your age?
yeah, so a lot of them were bullies. Like I was bullied a fair bit. Yeah, like some of the reasons pretty um were pretty wild. Yeah, so the most obtuse thing that I was bullied for, I was at a Bible school, and because I was a real cool girl, I
Obviously.
had like I had a headband on. Um,
Okay.
yeah, like not like a headscarf,
Not
but
like
I
a
mean
head
like
covering, yeah.
not like a
Just
head
like a head.
covering, but
Yeah.
it was like a headband,
Yeah, to
right?
hold your hair back, right?
To hold my hair back because God forbid I brush it. I don't. I never did, and I still don't. Um,
All
and
right.
one of the speakers for the young people session was like, made an example of me and was like, look at this young woman. She's not even baptized yet, and she's wearing a head covering. And the
Oh.
shit I got from all the other people, oh,
Oh.
she got her head. She's so good. Oh my goodness me, it was awful. That man threw me under the
Ooh.
bus, and I was like, listen, sir, it's not because I think I'm less than you. It's because my hair's feral. Like, hear me.
I
This
think
is
any
wrong.
woman can relate to that. Like, don't judge me. This is what I look like in the morning. Sorry.
Yeah, and you guys
Doing the
see
best I
it.
can.
Absolutely. But yeah, so yeah, there was that. That was a bit of yeah. I don't know if you heard about Bible school in Australia
I'm
yet.
very new to all the Australian stuff, so feel free to explain it for me. And we have listeners literally all over the world, so
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of other people besides me who have no idea what's going on in Australia.
Okay, all right. For those who know, you know. But for everyone else, so there was an old Air Force base in like near Newcastle, a couple of hours north of Sydney, and some enterprising Christadelphian somewhere bought this thing. It's surrounded by barbed wire fence. A bunch of bunkers in a court, surrounded by
Ah,
barbed wire fence, near the
ah.
river, on a big clear piece of land, with like a massive ass like dining hall and like kitchen from like I don't
Were
know
they
the
the old
60s.
structures? Yeah, they were like old
Really, yeah, the
military
old structures.
structures. Okay.
Kind of like yeah, but like bunkers, just like rooms with bunk beds,
Yeah, like
and then
military
like the
housing. Just bare
like
bones.
military housing, meeting
Okay.
halls, mess room kind of
Was there a
thing.
military church building? Like a room full of all the chairs and you just have like a podium at the front kind of thing?
Well, I would say yeah, like the main
Yeah.
part where we had the
Okay.
meeting would have been that, and those chairs like to this day, I can smell those chairs, and it's not a bad thing. Look,
Girl.
Zinnia's cringing. No, honestly, these spectacular old churchy chairs that like folded down, and they make this certain sound when everyone stood up together, and it was like this.
I'm
Weird
picturing like the gas
magic.
kind of sound where like they have like that little bit of air in them and they like,
yeah,
like
it's
there's
got that plus the thunk of the of like 150-year-old wood hitting 150-year-old wood. You know, like it's just
okay,
that
yeah.
stunk. Everybody.
Well, they were solid. Wow.
Yeah.
The
Totally.
barbed wire fence thing immediately made me think Jonestown, though. I'm sorry, that's intense. Like, yeah, they didn't think to like make it look a little friendlier. Of like, hi, we're the Christadelphians. We're totally normal. Come on in. Instead, they're like, yeah, we'll just leave the barbed wire. That's kind of a good vibe. Like, that's a good one for
it keeps
us.
everyone in and everyone else out.
Yeah, that's a little suspicious to me. That's alarming. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Unless there's like a lot of crime there or something where like they need it. But
maybe. I don't know.
It's
not like the coolest area. But there's literally not much else there. I mean, there might be now. But that was a long time ago.
Wow, what a wild place. So they had like children there having fun in this military base.
Correct. It was so much fun. Like we would also go out into the fields nearby and make.
Okay.
I remember we had like a billy cart race. You know, when we were kids.
Did you like play in the river?
No, that was not a river that you go in.
Oh, okay.
I don't think. No. They all seem to be land-based activities. I don't know why.
Okay.
I don't think people even got baptized in that water, though. I don't know.
I remember at the Bible school I went to, we had like a beach day. So that's what I was thinking of, was like everyone going out because it's summer.
Yeah. No, I don't remember that much. It wouldn't have worked with your like ankle length denim skirt. You can't get in the water.
Oh, so can I ask you a question? I've heard that Australia has some of the most liberal and some of the most conservative ecclesias in like the world in general. Where was your ecclesia that you were generally based in on that spectrum, would you say?
So I was generally based in one that was pretty liberal, but the Bible school was run by their conservative mob.
Okay. Because you mentioned the denim skirt, and that was a red flag for me.
Big red flag. Yeah.
I was like, oh no, she wasn't the one that made her wear the denim skirt every day.
Yeah. Look, my one, I think when I was quite young, was pretty conservative, but like, you know, at least they opened up the floor for discussions. I remember them having a discussion about wearing hats. And I was like, I think I was like 14, and I just kind of stopped. And I regret this to this day because I obviously missed the point. But, you know, I was 14 and was like, look, if you guys are just going to keep arguing about it, like, we'll just wear the fucking hats, you know? Like, let's just wear let's just wear the hats.
Was it about whether or not they were supposed to have a head covering or specifically hats? Okay.
Oh no, it was head coverings in general.
Okay.
And I was just like, if it's gonna cause such a fuss, I'll just wear one. Like, who cares? This is on you, not me. Well, technically, it was on me because it was on my head, but literally. But yeah. So, but nowadays, especially the church that I grew up in is super liberal. Like, some of them have reached out to tell me that women now do a heap of stuff. And yeah, we were out there, I guess, when I was younger. A lot of women wore pants, you know.
At meeting or in general day to day?
At the meeting, yeah. At the meeting, yeah. We were pretty out there.
I was never so bold. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I don't think I was either. Which is ridiculous because I would have been still willing to show up hungover as a skunk, like just stinking, but still put a cute dress on. Yeah.
Still feral, but
still feral. Yeah, still feral, but
covering.
Yeah, with my head covering. But yeah, like not that long, like a few years after that, then I started realizing what was really going on, and I started advocating, and I think that's where things started to go, like, I guess, get in trouble or go differently, because I was the squeaky wheel, and I was a squeaky wheel about everything, about women speaking, about what we're forced to wear or not wear, about human trafficking, about things we should care about, the environment, which at the time was quite avant-garde, I guess. Now everybody accepts climate
Yeah,
change as
I
like a
remember
very
when it
real and normal
wasn't.
thing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember when it wasn't cool. Like, I believed in it before it was cool.
I remember that.
I was just like, hang on a second, if we're the disciples, there are a few things we should be doing some things about. And argue about whether or not I wear a hat shouldn't be one of them, you know. And I did a bunch of public speaking as much as I could. There's a very, very beautiful ecclesia called Baringa. I'm going to name them because they're wonderful. And they let me speak one morning. I
Like a
did
real
that. Yeah.
exhortation? Okay.
Yeah. Basically, I exhorted them on ethical consumerism, just like,
Wow.
yeah, it was beautiful. I threw a fair trade chocolate breakfast kind of thing for them. So we had lots of like
Wow.
fair trade chocolate treats, and coffee. Yeah, just because at the time as well, it was like the fair trade stuff was pretty niche. But yeah, the campaigning paid off. The day before Cadbury in Australia announced that they were going to have fair trade in their main dairy milk line, the boss of Fair Trade Australia called me up to tell me that that's what was happening because of the advocacy work that we did.
Wow, that's so cool.
It was amazing. Yeah. Like, it totally paid off. And also because until that time I'd been giving people a lot of chocolate, but it was like, you know, organic chocolate, and everyone just wants to eat the basic stuff, you know. And so that was really exciting for me, because it meant the last argument of, well, the fair trade stuff is like organic, expensive, you know, now your Cadbury milk is as well.
Very
And I'll
nice.
have some, yeah. But that's the kind of thing I would advocate about, and poverty and stuff like that. And I got up and spoke as much as I could, even when I couldn't. There was one time I prayed for my youth group, and I got up on the stage to do a thing. Oh my goodness me, it was hilarious because nobody knew that it was going to happen. And
Did
I
they
was
all
like,
have their
all
eyes
right,
closed waiting for the prayer, and then you're just like,
surprise, bitch. No. Actually, no, I just said, I just want to do a little thing because there's like World Vision, we're doing this stand up against poverty. And basically, it was just like where youth groups everywhere got up and said a prayer for the poor, which is so radical.
Yeah, we never did that, not even once in my ecclesia.
Never prayed for the poor.
I don't think so. Like, maybe like
Really?
generally they would throw it out and be like, you know, God, please help those in need kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I don't remember them ever being like, please help the poor. Like,
Specifically.
please help them. Like, we actually care.
Yeah, because ostensibly that's what our mission work would be.
Mission work was also kind of foreign concept, to be honest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, also, but it shouldn't have been a foreign concept. And this is something that drove me wild, because I'm like, we all read the same book, yeah? We're reading the Jesus book. This is what Jesus did.
Hey,
yeah?
So did those people who believed in the Trinity. Come on, girl.
You got me.
But
yeah,
if you wanted everyone to be one religion, he should have simplified the book down quite a bit, apparently, because it did not work out that way. But let's look back.
Yeah, sorry, no, go on.
No, I want to look back. You mentioned that you were speaking and doing these things. So let's go back to maybe you just joining your meeting. How old were you when you decided to be baptized? Because I imagine you were before taking on more responsibility in the meeting.
I think I was, 16? Maybe? Yeah, I was 15 or 16, yeah. And I think that meeting I participated in was around the same time. Yeah, it was about... Basically what happened was I got baptized, and then I started to stop believing in the things that I believed in, more or less. I started to advocate for things that weren't happening.
It's interesting. You hit the age where you want to take like responsibility, accountability, whatever it is, to prompt you to get baptized, I guess, to be like, oh yeah, I understand the teachings. But it's funny that you also reach that age of like independence of like, oh, I want to change things too.
Yeah.
That's an interesting combination.
Yeah, it was a very interesting combination.
So it sounds like you weren't really ready to fit in that box, even though that was kind of the box you had signed up to be in after being baptized, that role of an ecclesial Christadelphian woman.
Yeah, but I also didn't see any other option, like not doing that thing was not an option, not getting married didn't seem to be an option. I knew that I didn't want to have kids, but like, yeah, there were a few things like that. And I talked about it with my mum too. Like, she knows, she's like, look, I kind of only taught you the only thing that I knew, which was, like getting married and having kids, and that was my whole life. And, that seemed to be the lesson, and that seemed to be what everyone else was doing. I knew I kind of like, as I got older, I was like, seems like less and less a good idea. But I hadn't prepared for any other eventuality, actually,
Well, I guess you
Yeah.
never really probably saw a lot of alternatives there, especially growing up
Not
a
many,
Christadelphian
no.
family. Like it's not even like you have an aunt or uncle. It's different. Usually they're all following the exact same kind of path and structure and
Yeah.
things. So
Well,
that
it's
definitely
funny
limits
you
it.
say that. There was one aunt who was different, and I think a lot of people who grew up in Sydney would remember her. She was just this beautiful single older woman who was always doing mission work in India and always living and coming and going from India and bringing back beautiful stories and doing beautiful fundraising. And yeah, like she was my role model, to be
Yeah, very
honest, because like
independent.
very independent and really focusing on helping other people less fortunate.
That does sound lovely. It sounds like, even though I don't believe the same thing she believes, it sounds like I have a lot of respect for that purpose and that doing good in the world.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Did you want to talk any more about how your experience as a Christadelphian changed at all after your baptism, or anything else about your role within the ecclesia?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of changed around a few times in that instead of staying at the one place, I kind of went around to speak and to go to visit different places that I, could speak at. I could hear other women speaking. And then in terms of our youth group, I was heavily involved and on like all the committees. I represented my
We didn't even
ecclesia
have
in
committees. What were you doing?
Oh, you don't have committees?
No,
I can run things.
we just showed up. That was all you had to do. What were you guys doing?
Organizing it, like our Sydney youth group was massive and
you
needed
were in
a
a
committee
city.
of young people to organize. Yeah, big city, lots of young people, and we had like for our youth group, we had friends come from Canberra, so that's a 3.5 hour bus ride.
Oh my goodness. That's a commitment.
From Newcastle. Yeah, like that would be like the party of the month would be our CYP class, and it would be like amazing music, guest speaker, events, like the biggest social kind of gathering of young people from like everywhere. And
you did it every month?
Did activities every month. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. It was huge and it was so much fun. Like it was really, really fun.
Okay. Well, that
we made
explains the
amazing
organizing.
music.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. And we were really out there because we had a drummer.
Nice.
I
never saw one of those at an ecclesia.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Like we were like the Hillsong of Christadelphia. We even clapped our hands. It was wild.
Okay, but do you have any like dorky music videos on YouTube that you would like to share with your friends on the podcast? Because oh my god, I want to see you like mashing out while there's a drummer behind you just going wild.
Oh no, I don't think that there's any, but I'm sure that there's some somewhere. Oh gosh.
Nowadays, there probably is in the current generation.
Would be.
They're all on social
they have
media
a
now.
TikTok of us.
Yep.
I wonder if there's a Christadelphian TikTok.
Oh, Christadelphian talk? I haven't discovered it. If there is, I haven't seen it.
I
think Chris Talk might just be like Chris Evans or something.
People
just like, look at Chris Evans. We want Chris Talk. Yeah, I don't
Oh,
know.
wow, what a
I know
trip.
I've found Instagram accounts I've seen. So like there's social media, the Facebook groups, they definitely get recommended to me as like the opposite of the Christadelphian ones. They're like, well, maybe you want to be a
Oh,
Christadelphian. I'm
yeah.
like, no. That wasn't what I was looking for.
But,
No, they're
yeah.
not the same.
And just like, yes, but no.
Like
No,
we know
thank
each
you,
other, but we're
no.
not together. It's
No.
like seeing your
Yeah.
ex. You're like, no, sorry, no.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Facebook. It's like this person was in your phone contacts once.
Before we go up to changing the conversation to going into you leaving, and again, you're
Mm.
going to kind of tell me that in whatever way works for you to explain it, because for a lot of people it takes like years really, where it starts the seed and then it kind of grows into actually leaving. You had mentioned that you also kind of wanted to talk about sexism, and we've already had an episode which we were talking about before we started this episode about kind of how it's a patriarchal system, and there's a lot of traditions in Christadelphia in general that enforces like female submissiveness, obedience, disenfranchisement, silence. So you mentioned you wanted to talk about sexism. So if you have any stories you want to share or thoughts on that, I figured I'd just open the platform if there was something you experienced while you were a Christadelphian that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, totally. I actually think one of the things that came to my mind was something that I started to tell you about before when I got up and prayed. Yeah. So I had actually just said to the committee, I was like, oh, look, I just want to get up and do this little thing, this little speech.
Yeah, just a speech.
And like just a little like
Just
memo
close your
to
eyes.
everyone.
Just close your eyes, everyone,
Well,
for
I
my
didn't
speech.
even say that. And what happened was I got up on the podium and I was like, I started to tell them what it was. And then I just like, I don't know, the spirit moved me or whatever. And I was just like, you know what? We're going to stand up and we're going to pray for those in poverty. And I'll shit you not, a room of 100-something people just stood up.
You're
And
at
they
the
just did what
podium,
I
right?
told
You're
them.
like, follow me.
Oh, no one person should have all that power. Anyway, this explains why men think the way that they do, I think, within our church, because
They see
it's
the
quite
power.
I felt the rush, man. It was for real. But also,
Wow.
but genuinely, at that time, it was genuine prayer that I gave. And the clap back for me opening my mouth and praying was spectacular. I mean, meetings, emails that would have put some of my would put like an assignment to shame, cross-reference, quoted to the nth degree, back and forward, public statements saying this activity was not endorsed by SCYP. Women don't pray. And I was just like,
women don't pray. All right, I'm
I
gonna
was
stop
so
doing that at
mad.
home.
Yeah, I was just like, nah, like y'all not doing a good enough job. Like I was so mad. But it was awful. It was genuinely awful how I
That
was treated
sounds
for that.
terrible, that backlash. That sounds so out of proportion.
Yeah, it was nasty, 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 nasty.
You're like, I want to pray for the poor, and they're like, oh, we hate you now.
Yeah, like who do you think you are? Yeah,
that's
you're
the thing
a
about
silent female at
silencing
best.
women.
Stay on your lane.
Yeah, you're not supposed to speak. It's all about the silence and that you broke that rule. And it's not even... We were talking about some things in the episode with Amy, talking about how none of those are actually in the bylaws of the Christadelphians, that women can't speak. It's tradition. It's just people saying, we're not going to let you do that, which I found very interesting, because it's like, what rule? And they'll just be like, we're just going to quote something to you. I don't care. It was interesting. It's like, people do in other religions and they're using the same book. So it seems like it's really just your traditions where you don't want women to speak. And again, it's that cultural enforcement. Was it more men or women or both who were really part of that backlash?
It was mostly men.
Okay.
Shocker. There were a couple of women who I would just like, there are a couple of women who, and I just was like, bitch, you're brainwashed, remember at the time, I was expecting a fight from the men, but the one or two women that piled on, I was just like, bitch, I have contempt for you. Really? I'm fine. I don't need you to lay on, I already got this from the brothers.
Yeah, it's interesting when a lot of the women take on more of that enforcer role, where it kind of like they're pulling at your ankle, keeping you down.
Yeah. And it's really sad because you're just like, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for all of us. But anyway, that was how I felt, and I tried for a long time to change things because at the end of the day, I am idealistic, and my community that I grew up with, and despite some weird treatment because I was a woman, like I still love them. I still want them to do better. Still wanted us to move forward into the future and all that. And yeah, like it was just sad. But yeah, I think that would be one of the standout examples. And then I think one of the other things that I think came up when it comes to like overtime, like sexism, that it kind of only becomes obvious like later in life. And my parents and my family were really, really loving. And they were quite adamant that they raised both me and my brother the same. However, when my brother was allowed to give an exhort, when I wasn't, it started to kind of dawn on me that while they treated us as same as they could, they still
At
didn't treat us the
home.
same because they weren't training us for the same roles in life. They were training us for gendered roles, which meant because of the nature of the gendered roles in Christadelphia, one would be submissive and the other one would be one of power. And I felt, I think I felt at that time, because me and my brother are really close in age as well. We also got baptized at a similar time in our life, at a similar age. And we were both kind of leaders. And so for him to then just be instantly given a platform and then for me to be torn down the second I try to do the same thing,
Yeah, the double standard there.
it really highlighted the double standard. Yeah, and I have spoken to my mum about this, being like, do you really, really feel like it was the same? I think it's an ongoing discussion. We don't want to talk about it all the time
Yeah.
because it's a hard thing to say to your parents. But I think it's important to know that even the ones that tried really, really hard to be really, really chill, this still happened. This is part of
It's part of the
the
culture.
culture of, yeah, it's
Yep.
totally part of the culture. And as you said, the traditions that held a lot of brains in a really weird place.
Yeah, and that's their identity, and that makes it hard
Mm,
because you really can't change that or you lose that identity. And it does sound like, they're
mm,
good people at their heart where they had the right intentions,
mm,
but the
mm,
community they chose wasn't able to really facilitate that goal that they had of raising their children equally, when that's really the only option. Is once you hit age, like, you kind of, the pressure's going to be on to get
mm,
baptized. If you do choose to become baptized, there's
mm,
certain roles and paths for women and a certain role and path for men, and
mm,
you will get pressure if you do not take on that role. If men choose not to exhort, there's a lot of pressure there, or
mm,
to not, date a woman within the ecclesia. I've seen that. And for the women, it's really
mm,
that submissiveness, just marry and have kids, try to keep you
mm.
small, keep your career goals small, keep your everything small. So
That was a really hard one to bounce back from too. I'm still trying to bounce back from that. I'm still poor, man. Although it's much better than it was, 15 years ago, that's for sure.
I'm sure. So why don't you start telling me about where you feel like the beginning was for when you started to leave the Christadelphians? What was the first thing you think?
I think one of the first catalysts for me leaving was probably when I moved to Melbourne. It was around then, or just before then, that I started to, and I don't know entirely why, but I started to, in the few years before I left Melbourne, I had went to art school. I had a bunch of friends that weren't Christo. And a lot of them referred to me as like the cool Christian. Like, this is my token
No.
Christian friend, you know, like she's not like the other ones.
Oh, it couldn't last.
It could, yeah, like it couldn't last. And also I think it meant that there was like like a disconnect between. So when I was a teenager, I had a few really, really close girlfriends with this beautiful, tight-knit group, and we were just the bestest of friends. And as soon as we became adults, a lot of the differences between us became apparent,
Mm.
especially, I think, between the classes as well, which you wouldn't think is that much of a thing. Yeah, like a lot of my friends were supported by their families to go to university because they had the money to, whereas my parents are like, we can't afford to send you. And in Australia, you don't qualify for Centrelink support, which is our like government support payments, unless you prove yourself independent from your parents. So I had to move out. I had to get a random job. I had to earn a certain amount of money. I had to work and be away from my parents before I could even try to study. So even though I was accepted into a bunch of universities, I couldn't actually go. So instead, I was like living alone on a small wage, being a bit of a rat bag, partying because I had money, like a tiny amount of money of my own, and I didn't know what to do with it.
Bite of freedom,
so just party house with my new scrappy art school friends, and then my nice, clean, career-orientated friends that were going to university and starting their career when you should start career, which is like straight after that, and they kind of went their way, and so that rift between us, it started to get bigger and bigger. And I just remember this one time coming out of this bar that has this spectacular happy hour, so a lot of us art school students went there, and coming out of it, and then like in the bar next door, a very expensive bar next door, a bunch of my Christadelphian friends came out of that bar, and I'd invited them to go out to the cheap one with me, and I hadn't really heard back from them. And then walking out onto the street and then seeing them coming out of this really expensive bar was just like, oh my God. And the embarrassment on both sides was tangible, but it really like highlighted to me like, oh my God, we're so different. And like, yeah, like I felt like you don't really want to be in my life anymore. And that's, yeah, like it was hard, but it made it easier to move to Melbourne. I think I was like, okay. Like it was easy to stay in another city when I did go, even though I didn't really have that much here. I just knew I wanted to be here, so I did. And yeah, but so I think a lot of the social,
you start losing those connections.
And when I was willing to fight for our community when I felt a part of it, but the more and more I felt like I wasn't a part of it, like I was just like, I don't know, I can't bother fighting, like it kind of takes the steam out of you.
Yeah, you had all those men fighting you and yelling at you, and then you have all of your girlfriends, it sounds like, not wanting to hang out, and that awkwardness of them kind of making like other plans without you and all of that. And I can definitely see that, because that's multiple layers of the community.
Yeah. So that's when I was just like, I'm going to move to Melbourne. And I think I'd already moved, or I was about to move. I was in the process of moving. I can't remember. I drank a lot those days.
Did you decide not to join another ecclesia when you moved, or were you still attending a different one?
I did. I joined a different one.
Okay.
And they welcomed me without any question. But the reason why they did is because they knew my grandfather. My grandfather went to one of the most conservative churches in Sydney. It was a really, really conservative Canterbury? Something like that. Cabramatta, that's the one. And that's one of the people in Australia, because when I say Cabramatta, they'll be like, oh, they'll know.
Okay. This is for you guys, Australians.
That's you. Anyway, so they knew so there was this very conservative speaker coming down for some event, and I remember that the what do you call them? Headman of the ecclesia. Oh, I've had a brain fart. It's been that long.
Not the arranging brother, the recording brother, or
yes, the recording brother, the recorder. Okay. Who's the MVP? That guy. Yeah, it was just like
the MVP.
Sorry.
All right, so the MVP of the ecclesia, he caught the ball, and
he's like, "Are you going to come to this thing?" And I was like, "No, I don't like that guy." And he was like, "Isn't he from your old ecclesia?" And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, he's from Cabramatta." And I was just like, "I'm not from Cabramatta." So I thought you were, because your grandfather. This whole time, he thought I'd come from there because of my grandfather. Same last name.
He thought you were conservative?
Yeah.
I mean, you did
I
wear the
shouldn't make a
hats,
face for a
so
podcast.
I
Sorry,
guess you
listeners.
fit in. You pulled out that denim skirt, maybe. I don't know how you passed, but
I
okay.
wasn't wearing that. I was in Melbourne. I was cool. I got rid of all my ugly clothes ages ago. It was it. Yeah, and I was just like, I'm not interested in hearing this dude speak. And I was like, what? So it came from there. I was like, no. Before I left Sydney, I was only attending ecclesias that would allow women to speak. And he was just like,
Oh,
shocked. Oh, okay. So the
wow.
baseline of where the thought I was coming from
Yeah, it was very
is
different than where you were.
very different from where I was.
That's funny.
Um,
Your
but I'm a bit of a troublemaker. I don't mind. I was like, that
girl,
was
that's
funny.
obvious.
But yeah, so like, yeah, so with that in mind. And when I was there, I met this guy who was from a UK ecclesia or
Okay.
somewhere he's from the UK. He moved over to Melbourne and joined the Melbourne ecclesia. I think he was staying with the recording brother. And we ended up in a relationship.
Long distance, or did he move there? I'm curious.
He moved to Melbourne
Okay,
and
okay,
I
so
had
he's living
recently
there.
moved to Melbourne. Yep. So I'd been in Melbourne for not even like 6 months and I met him. And and I don't know how else to put it. That man is a predator. And we ended up living together,
Whoa.
and I ended up in very, very quickly in a family violence relationship where we were living together. And he was abusing me. He would use the Bible to justify. This is going to go dark real quick. He would use the Bible to say, well, we're living together in sin, so we're living together like man and wife, which means when I say we're going to have sex, we're going to have sex because I'm your husband and you
Ew.
have to obey me. Yeah.
What the
And
fuck? Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah, I don't like
genuinely.
him. Yeah, I don't like him.
Yeah, no. And
Yeah,
like
no.
when I quote unquote would lead him astray, like every time everything went wrong or like he felt like he was being a bad person, he would blame it on me. And he once
Yeah.
tore up a Bible in front of me, being like, this is what you've done to me. And like it
What?
was deep psychological torture. Like he was
Yeah, that's so
such a
fucked
menace.
up.
Yeah. And like,
Whoa.
yeah, so everything
He tore
from
up a Bible in front of you
yeah, I know.
and
And
then
even
blamed
he don't
you.
like, and then blame me. Yeah, I'm like,
It sounds like a
for
classic narcissist where everything is everyone else's fault. It's never his. There's
absolutely,
never any
yeah,
accountability. No.
none whatsoever.
Oh,
And I
that's
think that he just,
disgusting.
and the thing is, like I mentioned this, but my parents were born into Christadelphia, so they're kind of
Uh-huh.
stuck in the thing that we get. And I was also born into it. This
Mm-hmm.
guy was converted
Ooh.
as an adult. And this is one of
Interesting.
the things I'm like, red flag, my man, because if you come to me as an
Yeah.
adult and say,
Yeah.
here's my church, and this has happened in other churches or
Oh.
religions, they said, here's our religion. There's one, for example, that I quite
Huh.
like, and they said, join our religion. If you're a good girl in this life, you'll be reincarnated as a man. And I was just like, bad idea. Don't want to do that. Not interested. You know what I mean? Like, if
Wow, that's
you
so sexist. They're like, yeah, you hate sexism now. Well, maybe when you die, you won't have to deal with it next time that way.
Sir, that is a downgrade, sir.
Hey, you girl
Anyway,
power, girl.
this is what I mean, though. This is the kind of thing that, like, as an adult, if you're pitched a religion that is inherently sexist, right? Most people say no. If that's appealing to you, you have a problem. Like,
Your
and
values
it
are
was
already
appealing to
off. If
him.
you're like, oh,
Yeah,
this would give me power
yeah,
over women, great.
yeah,
I'm
totally,
in. I'm
totally.
in. I can
And
use the Bible as a
exactly,
weapon to manipulate women. Awesome. I'm
exactly.
up for
Yeah,
it. Teach me
yeah,
how.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
he perfected it, and he was an
Wow.
absolute monster.
How long did that last, and how soon was it that you guys moved in together? That seems pretty wild. I guess like
It was really soon, but
it
it
was
was because
fast, yeah.
I was being a bit of a mischief maker with my freedom, and my housemates were like, act your age, and I was like, I'm acting my age, but I was acting like maybe a 19-year-old in my early 20s, and they were a bit sick of it, and so they wanted me out. But like I also feel like that this guy also pushed them a little bit.
Hmm.
And then I was like, oh, I got kicked out of my share house. Well, we better move in,
Hmm. Hmm.
because he was just staying with the recording brother in his spare room. And so, knowing what was happening, Guess what the ABs did about this?
Was it all your fault?
Not even.
What happened?
Fucking nothing. They
Ooh.
knew I was being abused.
They knew about the abuse too, not just your living in sin, your carnal woman.
Not just our living in sin. No, because you know what someone said to me after he left? They were just like, oh, we thought you knew what he was like. Because apparently he had a reputation in Christadelphia.
And
I'm not kidding you. And no one fucking told me. Do you know why no one told me?
No one had your back.
No one told me shit. And I was like,
you were a kid. You were not even like, you're in your early 20s. You're figuring everything out. You're out on your own, just trying to figure it out in the world. No one was like, well, maybe we should kind of look out for her a little bit. She moved away from her family and everything.
And you know what? The people that were like, oh, we thought you would know, were like, and this is another kind of class thing that come up. There were the people that were rich enough to be going across to the UK for a Bible school. And I'm just like, I can't afford to fly to Asia, man. Like, I had to do fundraising for 6 months so I could go to Asia. I was just like, these people were rich enough to just go to a Bible school on the other side of the planet and come back with all of the knowledge about who was cool and who was a psychopath, but didn't deem it appropriate to share it with me when I was living with a predator. They were just like, shit.
Wow. And knowing that potentially you're doing it because of your financial situation as part of it, where it's hard to support yourself on your own and you didn't have your roommates anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I was also like cut off. And so he tried to make me claim de facto for his visa. And then the government cut off what tiny payments I had already. And he stopped me over. He stopped me from working. He stopped me from studying. Like piece by piece, he took away all of the
destroying your
avenues
life
towards my freedom. Yeah, totally.
Your independence. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's classic forms of abuse, the financial abuse, the isolation, restricting your access to things that'll offer financial independence, getting a job with your education.
He refused to use protection, so I went to try and get a implant, and the day that I was going to go to the hospital to get that, he refused. He wouldn't let me leave the house.
Oh, wow.
Like he wouldn't let me get contraceptives either.
Up. That's very messed up. That is, again, another form of abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Good. So it was really, really awful. Like my family were worried about him.
About him or about how he's treating you?
No, they were worried about how he was treating me. Sorry.
Okay. I was like, excuse me. Like, how did you get it over them? I thought they loved you.
No. He was trying, but because, I think I've mentioned this a few times, underestimated the connection that I have with my mom,
That's awesome. I'm very glad you had that. That is good. Totally. Not everyone does. That's wonderful.
Like one time he yelled at her over the phone because she's in Sydney, I'm in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 hours later, she was on our doorstep. She got off the phone, she went to the airport, she got on the next plane, and she got her friend to pick her up and drop her at my doorstep and was like, the fuck you talk to my daughter like that? She's a bad bitch. I love her so much.
Will she adopt me? I love her. I'll come to Australia. What holidays do you celebrate? I'll show up.
She's amazing. Terrified, which is just amazing. Awesome, but also because of that, she packed me and my cats up and took me to a family friend's place.
10 out of 10. Love it.
10 out of 10, love absolutely.
It. That is an example of motherhood.
Right?
Yeah.
Fierce. Absolutely fierce. And so he was trying to...
empowerment. Like, he messed with the wrong women.
And just like trying to spread disinformation between us. Like he would say, I'm going to tell your mom that you're a lesbian and then she'll never speak to you again. And I was just like, well, but yeah, like I was just like, obviously I'm not because I'm with you.
Yeah,
idiot.
Kind of exhibit A.
This lie will die real quick. But yeah, it was very much, look, to be honest, that was really, really so traumatic for my whole family. Even my grandmother was traumatized by this guy. Like my old housemate was. I had a friend live with us for a little while. They're not over it. It's just, it was just such a nasty business. And then I guess at the end of it all to be told, we thought you knew what he was like.
Wow.
Was a bit ordinary. But you know what happened after that? because going back to when I actually left, this is not when I actually left.
Right? It's amazing the things we put up with. When you look back, you're like, what? Why was I still doing that?
This is not when I left.
Okay. And how long was the relationship roughly?
I don't think it was
Just
even
for
a
timeline.
year.
Okay, so less than a
Maybe
year.
like a year.
All right, so
It would have been about a year actually, yeah.
all right, and so then you're still in, so you still haven't left, but you're burning a lot of bridges and just having rough experiences with people, it sounds like. And yeah, you moved back to Sydney, was it, or did you move somewhere else in Melbourne?
No. I believe we landed with kicking him out of my apartment, and I had my friends stay with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I hope you threw his stuff out the window.
Yeah. He didn't really have that much stuff. Yeah.
So what happened?
But that's when I started smoking. He got me into smoking.
Great.
So, and my family were pretty disappointed by it, but like he had me smoking weed a lot, and and so then I started smoking just because we were rolling on with tobacco. So I just started smoking tobacco, mostly because he would be smoking and he'd be like, "I don't want you to be a smoker too," you know, and I'd be like, "Gosh,
did you do it out of spite?
Is worthwhile."
Thank you.
And but yeah, so then when I tell my family, they're like, "Look, I was smoking now. I just smoke regular cigarettes to stop smoking weed, you know, like." But I had this addictive behavior lasted for nearly 10 years after this trauma, you know.
Wow.
But you know, so I moved to a different share house, and it was a great big thing. Anyway, my poor hanging in there ecclesia in Melbourne was small. But they were like, "Oh, we don't have anywhere where we can have a meeting. Like, we need to have like a planning meeting or a committee meeting." Again, we have lots of committee meetings.
Don't relate.
It's great because it taught me a lot about governance, which I now use in my other parts of my career.
There you go.
But they were like, they couldn't find a location. So I was like, well, my house is in like really quite between everyone's place. So you can just have it at my share house, which was hilarious for everyone involved because all of my heathen housemates.
Yeah, someone comes out with like Jello shots, like, "Oh, you guys are here. Well, I guess I made enough."
Kinda, yeah. That was the vibe, and they were
just like, "Wait, hide the bong."
What are these people doing? You know, like,
why are all these women in skirts in the house?
Oh, you know what though? Like Melbourne was pretty chill like that.
Okay, good. They could
there was
roll with it.
no worries about any of that. They were really cool. But yeah, it was very funny. But yeah, there was a point of discussion where they were like, "We don't know," and I actually think that it might have been Rob, your boy, your previous interviewer.
Yes.
That we were discussing whether or not we'd have him speak at our camp.
Oh, was it when he was doing his blog?
Yes.
Yeah, and everyone was gossiping about him, about whether to kick him out or not, and to ban him.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, he was getting banned from Melbourne, or what was the vote?
Well, the discussion was, you know, we don't know if we should have him along, like, because of this discussion, like, he's voting. He's advocating for voting.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was one of his first things he said.
And he's advocating for, like, queer rights and all this other stuff. And I just said to them, well, I vote. And you let me into your church. I come every week.
Did they not know that? They must not have known that. No, I mean that you outed yourself.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, queer stuff and voting? That doesn't sound like anyone I know.
Right? And then I was just like, and I'm like, I support queer, you know.
Yeah.
And you let me in. So
I do remember reading Hannah Gatsby's book, and she talked about Australia voting for queer rights and stuff. Yeah, so I got a little bit of Australian politic knowledge, but very little.
Rap time.
Yep. Apparently, it's very tough. Yeah, it failed the first time. I remember.
But yeah, I just remember saying this. Well, I did I'm team this, and you let me stay. So why don't we just let him come and speak?
And they're like, or we have to kick you out too. We need a secret meeting over here. Wait,
Well, that's
everybody.
exactly what
But it's
happened.
at her house, so that's the problem. Where are we going to meet now for the secret
No,
meeting?
the secret meeting had to happen somewhere else, all right? And
Yeah.
so what happened was the secret meeting happened.
About you or Rob or both?
About me.
Okay.
And I was very lucky to have somebody who was on the inside.
Yeah.
I had an inside
informant. Okay.
An informant who was actually like, he had even, I think we were at their place for dinner, and he actually took a phone call from the recorder about me, and he came back and he goes, oh, it was actually a phone call about you.
Awkward.
And, you know, put everybody we're in a bit of a pickle. We don't know what to do. And I was just like, and basically I was like, what's happening? And they're like, well, they're basically trying to plan when the recording brother sits you down and be like, do you kind of fit in kind of thing?
Disfellowshipping. Yeah.
Well, I don't think they would have disfellowshipped, but I think they were trying to figure out how to have that conversation. And what I said to this guy was, do you know what? I'm going to save you the breath, because I lived nearly a year in a domestic violence relationship and nobody fucking talked to me then. But you want to talk to me about whether or not I vote?
Mm-hmm. That's what's important to you, not my physical well-being, but only my disenfranchisement of withholding my rights as a citizen? Okay.
Pretty much. And I was like, I'm going to save you guys the effort. You don't need to have that conversation with me. I'm going. And that was it. I don't know.
Wow, that was a fast ending and overvoting, of all things. You've been stirring the pot for a while, though.
Oh, I certainly have. I sure have. And I don't regret any of it, you know? Like, I know that I annoyed a lot of people, but I also know that I inspired a lot of people along the way. Like, I had somebody message me, it would be a fair few years ago now, but was like, look, I just wanted to let you know that I spoke about our duty as Christians to, like, care about climate change in my exhort today. And I wanted to say kind of like, sorry how we kind of ignored you and treated you back then, but, you know, you were right. And I spoke about it.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, cool, thanks. Like, 10 years later, but it's okay, you know, like, I did everything I could for you guys, you know. I did what I could. I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah, I think it's pretty futile to try to change the Christadelphians completely, you know, widespread, every ecclesia, like actual systemic change. It sounds like there were some ecclesias that were willing to change a little bit, you know. It sounds like in Australia you experienced it. I've never seen a woman exhort in my life, you know, at a Christadelphian podium, never seen it. So at least you had that experience, which I never had. But
so cool.
It sounds like you fought so hard, but the amount of backlash and just the scale of it for those things is incredible. Just the displacement of priorities. But I think a lot of it is what they're trained to do. If you're trained, like if someone who's like worked a call center for domestic violence, I think the reaction that person would have had, who is trained on it, would be much different than someone whose entire training for their whole life, you know, maybe they're a 50-year-old man now and they're like, my whole life I've been told voting's bad, so now that's what I care about and that's what I'm flagging from this conversation, because that's their values and their training kicks in. And people even talk about in the group sometimes, in the ex-Christadelphian group, that like that thinking still happens. One person said, listening to my podcast, that happened where I was talking about the history and I was just like, oh, like this about John Thomas, and they're like, I had that Christadelphian thinking where I just wanted to pop in and be like, no, that's not right, this is what we actually think. And he's like, I'm not even Christadelphian. And it's just, but it's the programming, the indoctrination is so deep that even ex-Christadelphians feel it popping out and they don't want it, like they don't believe it anymore. So then when you do have these people who are still invested in the group and invested in that, they let that programming run and like run that script of like, well, this is what we're supposed to do, this is how we're supposed to react, and just constantly like enforce that tradition and that rigidity of the system.
Yeah, totally. It's funny that you say that, because I feel like I caught myself doing that earlier even in our conversation.
It happens. Yeah. And it's crazy. Even after how many years out? Like 15?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. It sticks with you. But I gotta say, yours story's been pretty legendary so far in my mind. Definitely the most pioneering woman to be on here so far, and just ain't giving no fucks.
Yeah, it's pretty much me. It's still me.
Yeah. But very interesting. As someone who has never been to Australia, it's interesting to hear about so many different levels of dynamics, both between the men and the women and the different classes and the different types of ecclesias with the conservatives and the liberals. There's so much going on there. Maybe that explains why we have so many Australian listeners. Everyone's like, we're traumatized. Please, let's talk about it.
They're stressed out. Yeah, absolutely. And there was, there are so many things that happened between like both of those sides as well. Like they were so different, but then, there were some of us that would really try and go to both things, and it was all very...
Well, except for when that guy was speaking and you put your foot down, you're like,
I'm not going. No, by then I was over it. When I was younger, I was like, that's why I was going to Bible school. Not many people from my youth group would go to Bible school because it's full of the conservative mob. But I had some really good friends there, as well as some really good enemies. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah, you gotta have those really good enemies. I'm sure I'm gonna have a few by the end of this.
I love it.
All right, so that was the end of it, that dinner, and you were just like, I'm done. Did you send a letter or anything, or that was just it?
Nope.
And he just relayed it to the ABs and they never saw you again?
I don't know. I didn't even ask him to do that because I felt bad for him.
Yeah. Wow. All right. What would you say was the hardest part about leaving?
Oh my gosh. I think the hardest part about that leaving was the realizing that I was no longer part of that community. Community is really important. And I had to kind of make my own and gather my people and make my own community. And I did that by having some ridiculously big share houses for a long time and just like running wildness that way. But I think that part was really hard. I think the hardest part was also my family, because my family genuinely still believe in it. And so...
So you're really like the only one in your family who left?
I'm the only one in my immediate family
that's
in your
left.
Immediate. However, out of my parents, all of their siblings are no longer, except for one. All of the rest of them are no longer Christadelphian.
Okay.
One of them is now like a Christadelphian, but she doesn't even go to a Christadelphian church. She goes to a uniting church.
See, I wonder about those kind of people.
Yeah. Oh, my aunt. Oh, she really, I don't know. I don't know if she would fit into this kind of, the scope of this, because she still is.
She still has that identity.
Identifies, yeah.
Yeah, it can be hard for some people to really actually shed it. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. But everyone else left. So me and my uncles have left. And my brother and my mum and dad still have it. And I think that the hardest part is respecting their belief. It's easy to respect the belief of a stranger who's like a Muslim, or you know what I mean. It's harder to respect the belief of someone who and you've unbelieved it.
Yeah, it's definitely different when you were in it and you've already stripped that identity and you kind of have to tiptoe around it. I've definitely relate, since half of my family's in and half is out for immediate family. And so it's interesting to have watched those dynamics shift over time. It's tough when the respect only goes one way. I'll also say that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's my parents, they might not like it, but they still respect me and my life and my life choices. And that's more than a lot of people get.
Yeah, and I would hope as a parent that they're happy to see you in a much healthier relationship now, no matter what their thoughts on anything about it, compared to you being a good Christadelphian but having these terrible relationships and just feeling like garbage and being treated like garbage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My dad even said to me a little while ago, and I'll never forget it, he actually said, I'd actually be happy if you never ever got married. And I was like, thank you for saying that out loud. That really means a lot to me, because it's like I felt that there's the release of these expectations. I felt the release of it, but having it kind of verbalized to me really, really helped. And of course, the way that they accept and love my partner and that we live together. And when we stay with them, we now stay in the same room when we visit them. When we
Yeah,
first
that
moved
with the
together, they
parents,
didn't
yeah.
but now we
Yeah.
do, and they've come a long way to meet me, and so I try to be as respectful as I can be in return, because we've earned that with each other, I think. Yeah.
That seems healthy.
But
Yeah.
very lucky to have that.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you do. I'm sure that's been a nice anchor for you throughout your life to still have those relationships, because a lot of people, they can lose almost all relationships if they leave. So that's not always a universal story. So it's nice to have that, at least, even if you, like you said, you lost a lot of your community, but you didn't lose all of your family. And again, that's tough when most of us were raised in it, and so your family's in it, and there's a wide spectrum of how families respond to someone leaving.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have one easy question we throw at you. You ready? Do you regret leaving?
No.
I mean, for any...
Anyone said yes?
No. But I always wonder, I'm just waiting. So far, our community has been so wonderful, so supportive of this podcast. But I'm just waiting for, like, at some point, Christadelphians to infiltrate and then just be like, you weren't real Christadelphians, or they're miserable out there. You know, they have to spread that narrative of, like, don't leave. Like, it's bad if you leave. Like, these sinful people. And then we're out here, and I was like, all right, let me just ask you guys, you know, you regret leaving? Has your life been bad? Did everything come true that they warned you of? And everyone's just like, no. Like, for most people, life has gotten significantly better, more authentic, different, certainly challenges, but overall, no one has regretted leaving. So I like to ask everyone, and if you do, be honest, but no one's hopped back that's been on this... been on here.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't necessarily. Yeah, I don't regret leaving, but I do regret. I do regret letting those friendships with those women go. You know, I feel like I should have fought for them harder.
I think some of that may come with just maturity.
Yeah, totally. And I'm starting to reconnect with some ex-Christos as friends, and I think that at the end of the day, we're just different. It's okay. But yeah, like, I think maybe I need to forgive myself for for letting that go. Yeah.
I'm sure all of us have things we would have changed if we could have about our younger years. So.
Oh yeah. Let's not forget I was a brat.
And completely wild, apparently.
Yeah, it's funny. I wasn't that wild. I was accused of doing drugs before I ever did them. Yeah. I was into things like the environment. People assumed I smoked weed. I didn't even do that until that toxic relationship.
Well, they had to make you sound bad, so.
Totally. Yeah, that was some disinformation. Discredit her.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, definitely, like, wild is super subjective, because now that I'm in the queer community, I am so conservative. Like, it's always subjective to whatever community you're in.
So now that you're in a community that's very more like liberal and all of that, now you feel like you're at the conservative end?
Correct, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Like, you only have one romantic partner? Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Things like that. We're like, okay.
You're still in monogamy. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I see that. Okay. Interesting. Did you want to talk at all anything else about how your relationships have changed since leaving the Christadelphians? It sounds like you've reconnected with a few people who've also left, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and a lot of the queerer ones, I think. And sometimes it kind of doesn't come out. Like, I didn't know about a certain friend of mine until somebody else who I used to know was Christo posted this disgustingly homophobic and transphobic meme on Facebook.
Oh.
And being the person that I am, I went for his neck publicly.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't tolerate that shit anymore, you know? And because of that, I had several people message me privately, be like, oh, thank you for standing up for us. You know, that doesn't go away. And that helps me bring back the connections with the people that we needed, that we wanted. Yeah, I think definitely, especially the ex-Christos that are queer, like we have our own almost like tiny little network in a way.
That's
And
great.
I think I think that's important, even if we don't see each other a whole heap, you know. We know that we give each other life, you know, because there's such a unique perspective and experience to be in denial, as I was, or closeted.
Yeah, because you can't be.
As others were.
Yeah, no one was publicly out. It was a Christadelphian.
Yeah. There was one guy that was.
Of course, it's in Australia, so I've never
In
seen a
Australia.
Christadelphian who was gay and out.
He didn't
Okay.
last long, but you know, we all were just like, "Oh my god, that guy's so cool."
Wow. Did he have like a
Well,
partner? And if he did they come to meeting? Did they let him speak? Like, those are some of my questions.
No, he didn't speak.
Was he not allowed, or did he choose not to?
I don't know. I didn't
Because
really
that's what
know
I'm
him
curious
that well.
about. Okay.
He was a bit of an enigma.
Well, yeah, it's the fact that he was a Christadelphian to begin with that.
But yeah, like, I don't know. He'd probably be interesting to talk to. I mean, I think anybody who's been through that would have their own wild set of stories to share.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And what's your current relationship to religion or any other groups? Did you ever join anything?
I tried for a bit.
Yeah.
So I you know, me and my first housemate, we went along to some Hillsong for a bit. I worked for a Christian organization in the Philippines about 10 years ago. And in order to go, it's just a Christian organization, but in order to go there, you needed a letter of support from the pastor or something. So I joined back a local uniting church for a bit, asked for a letter, and the guy was like, nah. Anyway, I ended up getting somebody else to fudge me one. Because I believed in the cause and the work, but I was like, I don't need to be a full Christian for this. Anyway, so I made a rule. I made a little rule for myself. I was like, for myself and for others, I will, if you invite me to your thing, church, whatever, I'll go once. I'll go. I'll check it out. However, if I hear anything remotely sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, or that basically that women have like really strict gender roles and misogyny, so if I hear any of that, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back. So you guys, wherever you go, you get one shot. So there was a church that I managed to go to like 3 times before I was like,
go to 3 times.
I managed to get in 3 sessions before.
Wow,
I was like,
the bar is so low, and they still.
Yeah, tell us how you really think. Yeah, you're right. The bar is pretty low.
Yeah, this feels like the Bechdel test, but for churches. It's like, can you hold a service without being misogynistic, homophobic, and so on with your list?
Yeah, yeah. Like, can you meet my basic human rights list?
Yeah.
If you can, we'll go ahead. If you can't, that's it.
Yeah, if you can't treat me like a human with respect and value me, I'm out. And the people I care about, and just people in general.
Yeah, totally. But so this might come as then a surprise to you. I'm actually in a choir that is run by a pastor. No, sorry, a reverend.
I don't even know the difference.
I just remember because I like to call her reverend. So she is a female reverend.
Nice. Okay, I see that fitting with the vibe.
Yeah, she fits with the vibe. And she runs this beautiful community, and she runs a community choir. And I have found that has been one of the most amazing reparative kind of restorative things for me to do. So I'm singing gospel music. It's
That's
like
what I
an
was
a cappella
wondering.
gospel choir.
Okay.
Yeah, singing gospel music. I am going into a church space every week, but it is not uncomfortable. There's no any judgment. There's none of
Is it
any of that.
associated with the service? Like, is it Sunday mornings or
No,
is it like a
it's
different time?
not
Okay.
associated with the
Okay.
service. It is a completely, what's the word?
It sounds
Secular
okay.
event. Yeah.
Cool.
It's a secular group.
So,
So
and you don't have to be a member, like attending of this
no,
church to go or anything? That's great. Okay.
no, and it's
Interesting.
got this beautiful mix of people from all over who just want to sing.
One who joined a choir as an adult and she's loving it.
Yeah, it's really good because honestly, that was having a really good sing together in a group was actually one of the best things about Christadelphia, honestly.
But do they have drums at the new place?
I mean, yeah, sometimes we get out the djembe.
You got a
But,
jam.
we're also singing like proper like gospel, like
Do you like clap and sway? That's what I'm picturing.
Yeah, that happens too. But it's not in a place of worship. It's coming from a place of like the vibe of the music,
You make me want to watch Sister Act now.
We did one of their songs for Christmas once. It was
Girl,
great.
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was so good.
That sounds so good.
Yeah. Honestly, it's just so much fun.
Do you have a video of that one at least?
Yeah, we do. The
Okay.
gospel, the Gospel Project Facebook group has videos of our gospel fest, of our last Christmas, like Christmas karaoke carols. We do our performances. Yeah, definitely. You can see that's gospel.
Right.
The Gospel Project.
Share the link with me, and then maybe share one in the group. But I want that one. Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. It's so good. Yeah.
Any other positives? It sounds like the connection to music and that group singing is something that you got out of being a Christadelphian. Is there anything else that you've reflected on or just realized you've integrated into your life that kind of had roots in being Christadelphian?
Well, I love university. I love studying. Keep going back to studying. And it's funny because I was just like, I was describing it to someone the other day what we had to do in Bible marking. And they were like, that's just like uni. And I was like,
they taught me young.
Why did that take too long? Why did that take so long for the penny to drop? But yeah, it's the same. And so, I do enjoy studying. I feel like it keeps me sane. And maybe that's a throwback from that too. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to really pick out just one thing and be like, oh yeah, that's definitely that. But makes sense that there was the affinity.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You were just in an environment where that was cultivated because that's also cultivating Christadelphians to read their Bible really hardcore.
Yeah, except that in university, I got to speak about what I learned.
Yeah, right? Where no one told you to shut up and sit down?
No, I got to make cute presentations about it.
Yeah, good PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So what led you to joining the ex-Christadelphian group and connecting with other ex-Christadelphians?
Well, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I need this.
Do you remember how soon it was after you'd left? Was it pretty quickly after or later?
Oh, no, I don't actually know. Especially as there was, a bit of push and pull about all of it coming in and out when I was kind of felt like I was extracting myself slowly in those earlier years of my 20s. It was like that, those kind of push and pulls would be the kind of struggles that I would be really connecting with that group about. Yeah, or if something triggers you, going back to that group. And it's quite unique. It's like if you know, and if you haven't, you will never know the feeling of leaving.
Yeah, very like-minded group of people. Yeah, and even if you don't directly relate to that specific experience, most people kind of are familiar with it, and there's someone else in the group who does relate. Like there's definitely always someone who can kind of offer support and have empathy and to really understand what someone's going through or has gone through.
Exactly.
It's definitely good to have. Do you have any advice that you would give to someone who is leaving or has recently left the Christadelphians?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the hardest things that I've had to learn after leaving is um, to believe in myself. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's easy just like if you stop believing in everything and you believe in nothing, it's really easy to be really depressed. And, you know, I also, like, I didn't mention this, but it probably played a role in all of the things that we've talked about so far today. But I've
Mm-hmm.
had a diagnosis of depression since I was like 19 and bipolar since I was in my early 20s. And so protecting your mental health is hard enough without a
Mm-hmm.
structure that says that you're less than,
Mm-hmm.
you're not worth it. Um, and so when you're leaving it, like learning to love yourself or respect yourself or just believe in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
is probably one of the hardest things. I would say that I don't even think that I'm up to loving myself fully yet. Um, Believing myself, yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
believe in myself now. And that's something that I think is like so is so important, and especially for women, that's something that is actively taken away from you in that space, and giving it back to yourself, like giving yourself permission to have authority over your own being, your own life, your own path. It's also really scary because a lot of the messaging is also like you are a passive participant in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and and being active is also, you can't be lazy, you know.
You're the decision maker now. It's not just God or your parents or your uncle at the podium.
Or your husband who's taken over
Yeah.
making life decisions for you from them, you know. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely one of those things that has been an interesting one for me. um
Mm-hmm.
I also said, like, if anyone's thinking of leaving now, I would suggest talking about it in therapy, because
Mm-hmm.
I talked to my therapist about so many things over the years, and I always had a psychologist because of my condition, but it never occurred
Mm-hmm.
to me to speak to somebody specifically about what the leaving the community would be like. Like, it came up
Uh-huh.
occasionally, but having that particular trauma addressed specifically, and same with the domestic violence
Mm-hmm.
specifically, like, not doing that has had some serious repercussions on my life generally,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like health, mental health, addiction, and that kind of thing. And I think that it definitely set me back. I'm in a place in my career now where a lot of people would have been like 10 years ago. And
Yeah,
I
I
just
relate
feel
to
like
that.
that, yeah, I think a lot
Yeah.
of us do, because it's
Yep.
a big step back. And so I think, yeah, just like keeping that in mind and getting support for it, and just, yeah, focusing on the belief in yourself, because it's like I've had some points where I'm just like, yeah, if I don't have that, if I don't have me, and if I don't have, what do I have? And I have nothing. And that's just too sad to think about,
And there
you
was
got to have something.
comfort in believing in God.
Mm,
Like, I definitely remember times where it
mm,
felt, safer somehow believing in something else like
mm.
that. So it was very disconcerting to suddenly not know what you believe after having been so certain for so long that you did know what you
Yeah.
believed and what to expect out of life and what was important. You had your values, like everyone gave you
Mm,
all that whole toolkit, and then you throw it out and
mm,
you're like, oh my goodness, how do I make a new toolkit all on my own? And I
yeah.
think we've had a lot of people, especially women, talking about getting in touch with their intuition and actually trusting their gut. So,
Mm.
like,
Oh
even
my God,
with,
please.
yeah,
Yes.
like, especially with relationships where you may, like, I think now you would probably pick up signals faster about someone who is not safe to be around, and you'd listen to
Mm-hmm.
your gut. Whereas I think for a lot of us, being raised in Christadelphia, you kind of have to ignore things when they're not right because you have to fit
Mm,
in, and the tradition is going to force you to kind of comply. So if you don't like something, you
mm.
kind of go along with it. And I think at some point in there, maybe a psychologist could talk more about it, but that at some point you
Mm.
turn that off and you just don't listen to it. And so it's been interesting. A lot of women have
Yeah.
talked about kind of having to learn to trust yourself, learning how to protect yourself, as well as building your own identity
And
and
listen to
beliefs
your
again.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm currently now I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, and I do speak to a lot of women who also, they haven't been brought up in the way that we have, and they also have kind of been taught to squash their intuition and their gut feelings about things as well. So I think there's also a product of our time, and then just like magnified by this culture,
Yeah.
that we had, and it really doesn't do anyone any favors, because it's hard enough without it's just hard enough without it.
Absolutely. I was reading something recently. I was thinking about there's a religious trauma newsletter that I signed up for, written by a psychologist who's pretty incredible. So it's just making me think about that. But that she even talked about the impact of like authoritarian parenting and the effects that it has on kids, and how it kind of ends up being traumatic because it withholds certain things that kids need for healthy development. So I even wonder about things like that, where it's just as a culture, there's certain standards and things that are passed down generation to generation that probably just aren't the healthiest, and how that plays out with people's development, having been raised in it from kids. And so a lot of us, I think many of us relate to trying to unlearn all those things and figure out how to be a person and to unlearn those things that we were raised with. And I think that's part of the trauma, is almost just the whole environment itself. If you were raised not to have a voice, it makes it a lot harder when you're in an abusive situation to speak out. And if you're in a home where you have an authoritarian parent and you can never fully express yourself to be like, hey, I don't believe this, hey, this is wrong, you always have to kind of swallow that down. I could see how that plays a part. So that's just kind of some thoughts based on reading some psychology around it. But I would love to get like an actual religious trauma psychologist on here to teach us,
That
because
would
that
be
would be
amazing.
amazing. So if anyone knows
That would be
someone
so good.
and they would be interested in doing that, I'm more than happy to have them on. Just send them my way.
To us.
Yes. We would all love that. And then do you have anything else that you would like to recommend someone who is leaving or is left? Like any books, music, podcasts, anything that you ever found helpful for you?
Did you hear my cat?
Yeah, I was like, did you have a baby in the last 10 minutes? It literally sounds like a baby crying. And I was like, you said you don't have children. Oh, is it the pretty white baby? You hungry?
Can I just get a glass of water? I'm just going to get a glass of water since he's already interrupted me.
My cat blends in with the darkness, so you wouldn't be able to see her. She's just part of the void now behind me.
Anyway, sorry, what was the last question that you just asked?
Any resources you'd recommend? Books, music, podcasts, anything like that you had found helpful when you were leaving? It sounds like you would recommend therapy, it sounds like, for people.
Yeah, see a professional. Please.
The world will be a better place if you deal with your problems. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like, don't rely on the women in your life to do all the emotional and psychological lifting for you. Do it yourself.
I feel like that's same towards the men, but okay. All right. Anything else?
That's what I mean. Like,
yeah. Been there.
When it comes specific to leaving, I would say I don't have any one thing in particular to recommend, except that, like, to do. But I can tell you what not to do. Like, I can tell you what
should they not to do? What should they not do?
Like, I just think not to do is try not to just use drugs and alcohol to cope.
Okay, that's a probably good recommendation for any problem you're having.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I did that more than now it's my job. Yeah, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I understand that. I think a lot of my avoidance of dealing with it happened using drugs and alcohol when I was younger. And so I think that, like, talking about it definitely help.
Get it out instead of just running from that feeling. Just actually process it, talk about it, move through it.
Yeah, because it's like, what's it called? Chasing the Scream by Johann Hari is an amazing book. And anyone who's experienced trauma or addiction, or both, or one or the other, would, I think, or has someone in their life that's experienced that, I would say to definitely give that one a read, because it helps to understand why you did what you did. Because I think then the other part is that, like, it's been a long time for me now. I need to also learn to forgive myself and understand for myself why I behaved the way I did when I was in my early 20s. I had that much cognitive dissonance going on. Like, no wonder I drank a lot. And I just think that we have to give ourselves some compassion and forgiveness for what we've done to cope within the situation that we found ourselves in.
Yeah, and you didn't even realize. I do think about that sometimes too, of just we were so cut off from our intuition, often from being able to really independently make the choice for ourselves about what we were believing, the choices we were making, because we were kind of given and encouraged to follow certain choices. And so, yeah, I definitely remember having things like that where I think I was reacting to knowing that things were wrong for me and that things didn't feel right and that I was unhappy. But mentally, I couldn't admit for so long that the reason was my association with that organization and the amount of pain it was giving me. And so, I was definitely reacting to all kinds of pain, but not really, addressing the problem and making a big change. So it was incredible the things that we did when we were so blinded to it and couldn't actually make authentic moves that would deal with the problem.
Yeah,
what was triggering it. Yeah.
So I think there's 2 books that are Australian that I would recommend that I just thought of that are related in a way, that I think that women who are, especially women who are leaving or considering leaving, I would suggest to read these books, because if I had read them earlier, I might have moved earlier. So the first one is I Don't by Clementine Ford. And it is about the messy and lie-ridden infrastructure of marriage. Institution, sorry. So it's about that. So it's called I Don't.
And
it's just one of the best books I've ever read.
So like a critical look at marriage.
A very critical look at, and show like how the Bible has been used against women, how all this different stuff has been used against women in order to basically enslave us.
And it's subjugation. No wonder men like the Bible so much, because it makes them look good and gives them power. And they didn't want to give up power. They're like, you should all be Christian. This book says that you guys can't vote.
You have to do what I say. Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, wait, no, I don't.
Absolutely. And people just, it's about maintaining a power structure that doesn't serve us.
Definitely encourage them to have a feminist awakening. Great. What's the other book in your feminist book club?
The other one is by Jess Hill. And it's called See What You Made Me Do. And it's about coercive control. And I think that the number of tools of coercive control are built into the permissions given to men within the church. So
they're kind of given a toolkit to use these methods? Is that what you're saying? And it's just built into the culture and traditions and stuff? Okay.
Yeah. Culturally, you're given permission and the tools to perpetrate coercive control. And so Jess's book on See What You Made Me Do, I mean, even the title, I have been told those exact words.
Ooh.
See what you made me do.
With ripping the Bible, he's like, you did this. And I'm
you made me do
whose
this.
hands are on it?
You made me do this. Exactly. And so I think that one is really, really, really important. I think it's hard read, but both of these women are Australian authors. They're incredible writers, and just gives you an insight that's, Jess's is hard to read for sure, but definitely worth reading, because you can understand just how many little things are being used against you and you don't even know it.
Yeah,
and
it's
I think
pretty
once
insidious.
You realize, it's super insidious. Yeah, and I think the more knowledge that we have about how these things are used, the less able those things are to be used against us.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I really think, especially if you're on the fence, or even if you want to stay, even if you want to stay, that's cool. Just
but to be aware, an informed choice.
Make informed choices about what kind of things you're buying into actively, when you go into these relationships. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. Those sound like fantastic books. I'll be curious if there's any way I can get them in the US, but for all of you Australians, definitely sounds like a great
Probably can.
recommendation there. But yeah, that definitely sounds like something up my alley. I think I very quickly had a draw to feminism after I left, and I think a lot of it was just that thirst for this knowledge and so much of it resonating. And now being able to identify and kind of learning about it to help me process it. So I love that you kind of had that too and found that helpful. And I think that's a great way to avoid being susceptible again to another controlling group, because you do hear about some people who go from a very controlling group to another one and they don't
Absolutely.
fully regain their independence and autonomy because they are more comfortable with that kind of environment. But I think if you understand the harms that are happening and you learn to spot it, and develop kind of that self-protective mechanism of being able to be like, no, like, I know that you're trying to control me. Like, this is a tactic. This is manipulative. This is not genuine. This is not about God. This is about you and your power and control. And that's when you can kind of make a more informed choice and find a place where people are going to treat you well and support you and love you and not just control you.
Yeah. Wild, right?
Yeah, those places actually exist. Keep looking if you haven't found one, please.
They do.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to hear. It's interesting to hear about people from after they've left. Like, you've been out over a decade, and now hearing about you finding community, finding some healing in your choir, having done a lot of processing, therapy, finding healthier relationships. And again, I apparently there's people out there who just have all that at 18 and like they figure out their own beliefs and have healthy relationships. Like, these mythical people, I don't know. But for the rest of
I have a
us,
theory
like,
that they've got savings and a superannuation. Like, that's my
probably,
theory.
I don't know, because the rest of us, we had to spend like a decade figuring all of that stuff out. Like, what do I believe and how do I deal with all this trauma and all of that? So but I think it's inspiring for people, because if there's someone who is just now leaving, who's, listening to this and struggling still with having just lost their community or having gotten out of abusive relationships, I think it's good to finally hear from people to be like, hey, like, it'll get better. We've been there. There's a place where you can talk about it in our group, to relate to it. And there's plenty of examples of people who have been through hell and gotten out of it to get to a safer, happier place. So I love highlighting that as well, because it's a whole journey. You had your happy childhood, and then you had a lot of turbulence, and then finally had your moment, like, and
yeah, exactly.
and then finally got to where you are now. And I'm sure that your journey is going to continue, but I think it's wonderful that you've been able to kind of reclaim your life. And it sounds like you're living a very authentic life. You really know your values now, and you're setting an example for a lot of people.
Yeah, and things like activism and fighting for people's rights, they're not exclusive to these are the kind of things that now that I'm part of a big women's rights organization now, and
I'm not surprised.
still on lots of committees, but the committees are mostly filled with women doing things.
That sounds better.
There's so many things out there that you can do and still do and still work on. Like,
not just a church
for
community.
me, there's hope. Yeah, that's it. There's hope. Like, there's so many different ways that you can still
be a part of
something in the way that you might want to. Yeah, totally. In the way that your heart and soul might have really sung with when you were younger, and they're not really knowing where to put it. There are heaps of places to put it.
I am loving hearing about what everyone did after this. Like, one person who did Toastmasters, and so they're doing public speaking, and then, join this choir, and they're singing, and then like Rob becoming a lecturer and author. And it's just funny to see like them taking the bits and running with it. It's really cool to see what everyone got up to after leaving. And again, for most people, that's where the story ends. When you were Christadelphian and someone left, you never really, at least in my ecclesias and the people I knew, you never really heard about what people were up to after they left, especially before social media. When we were younger, I'm sure now some people stay connected, but often they're also cut off or things like that. And so now it's like we're finally telling those stories of like, oh, we went out and we started healing each other and building communities, and then spreading that love outwards and acceptance. So I think it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So I want to say thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about today that we weren't able to get to?
No, it's been really lovely talking to you, and like a big shout out to the Facebook group that connected us and my
Yes.
childhood friends that I see in there as well. It's so good that we've got each other. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, I really love it. It meant a lot to me to be in the group, and I'm glad I've kind of been able to, highlight us, further connect us, all of
Mm,
that. And hopefully more people will continue to join and find a lot of connection in that group and
yeah,
reconnection, as you pointed out, for a lot of people too.
yeah,
And people have already
totally.
left. So thank you very much for coming on, sharing your story, living boldly. And for everyone else, thank you. I I have no
Bye for
official
now.
ending. So it's like, all right, thanks for listening to the Life After Leaving podcast. It's been so fun chatting with you. And we'll talk to you again next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you to everyone who helped make this episode of the podcast possible. Today's episode was edited by me, Zinnia. I'd also like to credit my dog for her barking in the background, L. Croons for our intro music, and the ex-Christadelphians who submitted audio for the intro music. Thank you. If you'd like to join our community, you can find us at A Group for Ex-Christadelphians on Facebook. If you're a fan of the show, you can follow us on social media on Facebook or Instagram at LifeAfterLeavingPodcast. If you'd like to come on the podcast, please reach out to me at lifeafterleavingpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving a rating or sharing this podcast with a friend. That's all for today. Thanks and see you next time.